Hello, and welcome to Startup Stories with Scaleway, where we explore cutting-edge startups around the world and how they leverage cloud computing technologies. I am your host, Ethan Pierce. Today's guest is Noren Pachergal, COO at Erxes, a sales, marketing, and customer support platform for growth marketing. Welcome, Noren.
Hi, thank you for having me today. I'm super excited.
It's great to have you. And so I'm in Paris, you're in Mongolia. I love the connectingness of how we can do these things now and be able to have these chats. I'd love then just to start with some context. We'll have a bunch of questions about kind of what you do at Erxes and where things are at and how you build what you build and the different stuff. But just to kind of give a brief pitch to kind of better understand for context the rest of our discussion, what it is that you do specifically at Erxes.
Yep. I am a chief operating officer of Erxes. So basically, Erxes is an open and fair coded and growth marketing platform, which essentially help enterprises, especially the sales, marketing, and customer support team can work together effectively to bring a greater output.
Kind of to go into that then, understanding the basics of this platform is maybe to talk about the backstory of what created this need. Why did the founders decide we want to build this solution? What was the problem that you found? What was the kind of thing that brought everyone together to solve the problem that became Erxes?
Right. We've been a marketing agency initiated back in 2010, like about over 6 years, which is early 2016, that we realized that we spend a lot of money for these tech tools. Because, like intercom or sales pipeline, like so many different like tools that we use, but like somehow like the single tool can only fill the part of our entire market, like customer life cycle. So we ended up using several different tools, and eventually we realized that we spend a lot of money on those tools, and still like none of them are fully solving, like fully helping, like covering our operation fully. In some cases, like there's a lot of manual work, so we decided like maybe we can try doing our own MarTech tool. And then that really initiated the whole idea of Erxes. So, MarTech industry is pretty large industry. There are like more than 5,000 tools were developed. But we are different because one, we are open source. So it's completely free for anyone to use it, especially the startups like us or, like companies in early stages can use it for absolutely free of charge. And two, because it's open source, it has like very flexible infrastructure that can be customized entirely to fit to any organization's unique needs. Free, data sharing also made easier with some other tools, some other existing tools. So, that allow the entire company can work on single tool focused on customer journey.
Well, I noticed on the website that there was a great example that to this point of kind of bringing together all these tools um, and the pricing of that. So I saw things like, you're kind of replacing Trello and MailChimp and, something like Pipedrive or those kind of things, 4 or 5, 6 different tools that, could easily cost you, 4 or 5, 600 bucks a month. If you're doing those all together at the beginning. And for you, it's like 20 to 30 bucks a month for a single tool. But also really make sure that the integrations are tight between those, because that's also important so that customers don't feel like that the people that they're dealing with on the sales, customer service life cycle are not always aware of what the other people are doing. I think there's a really interesting discussion there, and definitely from a price perspective, that's super important. I guess this open source conversation is super interesting to that, and I think that then leads us into the kind of the technology stack of this. How is it that you are building all of these different tools? We'll talk a little bit about the cloud computing infrastructure later, but just this idea of there's a lot that has to be built there, and a lot of different things that you have to glue together. So maybe we can talk a little bit about your technology.
Sure. Yeah, we are open source. So basically, that means that our source code is out there free for anyone to use it. And um, we support this because, I mean, like we believe that open source has been eating the softwares these days. And I mean, having like anyone having equal opportunities to get access to any tools, MarTech tools or any tools, is like the great idea that what we are behind this. Because I mean, these days there's so many tools, MarTech tools are available, but um, like the ones which is really solving the issue, ones which is really effectively used, is usually a lot expensive, and like especially expensive for the like early stages businesses.
Really just the technical, the technical kind of infrastructure. What is it then that there's a lot of pieces for you to have to kind of glue together here, and so well, I guess we can maybe it makes it easier to look at that in the context of cloud computing, because this is the Startup Stories with Scaleway podcast. We're here to talk about great startups like you that are leveraging that cloud computing infrastructure. So maybe that, to talk about your technology stack, let's talk about, you mentioned the open source piece. People can download the source code and use it themselves and look at it. But obviously there is a hosted version of this, a cloud computing version of this for your direct customers and clients. So I guess maybe we can talk about your technical infrastructure from the perspective of your cloud computing needs.
Yeah, I mean, yes, even though that we have our this open source version, like installing it and configure all those technical backend stuff is really requires really high tech technical work. So basically, if anyone wanted to use this platform, use it in the open source version, that company has to have a solid tech team which can maintain the whole those technical work. But as we said, that our mission is to make MarTech accessible for the company in any stages, and especially any industries. Like we also have our open source version as well. So, well, we also have like our online, like simplified online version, which is on the cloud. Yes, and that's basically for small and medium enterprises and who has no technical background, and like for those just like signing up and then create your companies and setting up all your basic operational activities is a lot easier than any other tools. But at the same time, when you are like as an organization, when you like SaaS organization, when you are dealing with this SaaS offering SaaS tool, then you have to have like a lot of infrastructure, architects, and so many things that you have to consider before you even start it. So, I mean, there's because you have like a multiple tenants, and there's a lot of activities that will be, I mean, available on your tool. Then you have to plan it really well at the back, like make sure that like there's security issues.
The underlying point here is we've seen this like with WordPress, Magento, and all these platforms that have become very, very powerful and big in terms of their communities. And much of that is driven by the fact that it's an open source tool that people can download and use on their own. But they actually then have monetized significantly well by providing that online version that they are doing themselves in the cloud. And so it's an interesting model, and definitely sounds like with your robust open source platform providing this version of it that is available to startups and small businesses, medium businesses that don't require lots of configuration. And with your hosted version, that sounds extremely interesting. I'm definitely going to check it out after this a little bit more in detail because I think that that's very interesting to be able to deploy that kind of a suite. I looked over the tools that you offer and kind of looked at it, but I think I'll definitely want to sign up for a free tier and figure this out a little bit more because I think it's very interesting as a project, especially in the beginning whenever you just are getting started and you need to have some robust tools without necessarily having a large contact base or a lot of moving pieces to your growth marketing yet, because it's all new, and so you potentially are paying for months and months of a first tier of a platform without actually using much of its functionality. And so I think that's a super interesting idea of gluing all these things together that you have and that you're providing this hosted version. Maybe then we can talk about, you've already done this a little bit, but let's talk a little bit about your value kind of add, your difference. What is it that Erxes does differently than your main competitors? And I guess, obviously, if we look at the individual platforms that you mentioned, that you're solving several different things in one suite of applications, but there are also other platforms that glue together some of these different tools. So, what would you say is from a competitive advantage, or if I'm listening to this and thinking as a potential client, why would I want to sign up and try out your software? What makes you different? What makes you the good choice?
Yeah, I think I've already mentioned that before, but I mean, what we do as a service is really nothing special than what others doing in this field. But like what's special about us is basically it is open source, so it's free, and two, we say that we replace at least 5 to 6 existing tools. Basically, as I've mentioned that like the most of those current existing tools can only fill the part of the business life cycle, but those can be, I mean, when the single company using several different tools, but those tools doesn't talk to each other, which means that creates a lot of manual work to shifting the database between them, and there will be a lot data losses as well in the process of doing it, and that follows, I mean, process inefficiency as well as low performance and things like that. Like when you're spending so much time manual work to shifting those two different tools which doesn't talk to each other. So our idea is to allow like a company, like an entire organization, work on a single tool. And I think a lot of our clients appreciate this because basically when you can choose like one tool can do like 6 others doing, which is like which is going to be great advantage. And also like we've got like 4 ways to share the data between some not like a martech tool, also like a HR or accounting or so many other like tools like data sharing made pretty easy with Erxes, which also allow like the connection between different teams within the organization. So, like ideally, the whole company can work on a single database. So then there will no confusion and there is no any additional works and stuff like that. And also, yes, why we're different? I think we are because we are open source. I mean, we can structure like the we can like restructure the tool entirely to make it fit to this like any different unique needs from the users requires. Because you know, like when you see like two same almost same company who's in like both in the same industries, but when you open and when you see the processes, they're like very different from one another. And I mean, every company has unique needs from the tools they use. So like a lot of the time, like softwares, because I mean single software can't put like so many of these different needs on like just one tool. Um, like companies
Mm.
struggle to, I mean, fit into whatever tool they're using, because sometimes the tool requires even additional team member, and in order to like get the most out of that tool. But with the Erxes, you can actually structure it, like make it fit to your tool, your needs, whatever needs you have, so you can make it fit to your needs. We got this like 11 enterprises at the moment. Those are like usually large enterprises which regulates, which basically work in highly regulated industries, like a banking and insurance company, because like those are like other like softwares in the martech industries doesn't allow the company can actually keep their database within their premises, you know. But Erxes, with Erxes, you can do that, which is basically a lot safer. And I mean, some industries actually regulated to do that. So that could be other advantage that like difference that we might have. So yeah, I mean, when you talk about that, there's a lot more because it's open source actually. Like, I mean, our development, the speed of the development and growth doesn't limit it by the member of the developer that we have, because within our open source community, there's more than 25,000 enterprises. So, I mean, we have every day like additional new features or translations even made by our
Mm.
community. So basically, I mean, the development speed can be pretty quick compared to other softwares as well. And even if you are like one organization, and if you wanted to use one tool, and then you wanted to link it to some other like HR or accounting tool you have, or if you wanted to add like a brand new feature which your company needs, you don't have to wait for us to do that. You can hire some tech team to do that, and then you can own the tool yourself. So yeah, those are the like differences that we have.
Yeah, no, I love that, and that's it's lots of good reasons, and definitely it looks like you've built something really solid, but that's customizable. And to that point, you mentioned your large developer community, so that's a great sign of how many people are involved in supporting and building a project like this. And then my next question, then, or not so much a question, but just a discussion point for we talked about before we started the podcast is you're currently raising funds. Normally, I don't talk a lot about investment rounds on the podcast, but for disclosure reasons and different issues with regulatory compliance. But you're doing a continuous safe offering through Fairmint, which is an investment thing that we can talk about while you're doing it from a regulatory perspective. And so Fairmint is a startup that I know some French founders based in San Francisco. Full disclosure, I'm actually an investor in Fairmint. So I was super excited to see that there's the invest button on the Erxes website for working for people to be able to come. And the very quick version of how that works is if people have dealt with investment and they know what a safe offering is, it's basically a way to minimize the discussion around the valuation of a company until that company is even larger and has created more value and is easier to kind of value from a financial perspective. But this continuous idea is really interesting. It's basically open ended to where you can just keep raising money as long as you want to by offering kind of this widget on your website where people, when they click on it, they go through the KYC, know your customer kind of process of being identified. And then they can use their credit card, they can use crypto, they can use whatever they need to in order to be able to invest. And basically, somebody could invest in Erxes in 5 minutes. They go to your website, they click on the button, and pull out their credit card, and they're good to go. Looks like you've raised a little over $1 million on a 20 million valuation. So congratulations on a great beginning to where that's going. Is there anything you'd like to talk about, just about that journey of raising this capital, especially as a cross-border global type company between San Francisco and Singapore and Mongolia and these different things? Raising capital is a not an easy journey, and it's great to see that you guys are being successful from kind of with this global perspective.
Sure, yeah. Yes, we choose CSO investment type for our fundraising and pre-seed rounds. So yeah, the reason why we choose this because I mean, like we support like inclusivity, transparency, and democracy all the way. And I think these types of investment is also like a pretty brand new, I think, investment type of the investment. So yeah, this also support this transparency, inclusivity, and democracy. So I think like how it does basically, you got this. You launch your investment round privately on your website for anybody, like not like angel investors or like a minority of the group which has more money. It can be like for anybody within our community. It can be customers, or it can be our open source community members or clients, or it can be anybody. So yeah, it's actually include it allow anyone can be our investors. So yeah, that is the like a great idea. And also it gives us like a little yes, as you said, that the investment can be like a really uh, um, difficult, like challenging work, like when you are like a little startup which has just little over 20 or maybe like 18 team members, just over 10 team members. And like when you're in the industry that if you're not going to be really focused on whatever you're doing, and you may not be existed in the next day, when you're in that environment, like when you start like having investor relations, it's a lot of work. It's like with this little, as this single, like a little startups can be really challenging, and sometimes you may even lose like your focus on your main operations because like there's a lot of work. Yeah. So but with a CSO, you simply has to do all your calculation and everything like at once. And then once you launch your investment on your website, then all you need to do is just focus on your main operation and then just do nothing else, So it'll be like a continuously getting investments as long as you do your job really well. You don't have to like lose your focus by doing so many different like paperwork or like so many other things. So yeah, I think that's the main reason I personally like. Yeah. And yeah, that's the last thing I was going to say, that it's also like for the investors, it can like you don't have to just like a other traditional investment round that you don't have to invest in and then wait for, I don't know, like 6 or 7 years until IPO or VC fund round and stuff like that. You can just be like within a year of time, like that's the locked period of time since your investment, then you can actually resell your shares and your tokens, like yeah, you can be out of the company. So that actually gives you a bit of a flexibility. That's, yeah, I mean, you can back up.
It's a great idea, and it does create a great flexibility. And I think your point, maybe without even getting into the investment side of it, which is not really the point of our Scaleway discussion here about your company, what you're building, and how you're doing that. But just this idea of it allows you to get your money and build your company. And startup founders, unfortunately, have to spend a lot of time not building their company because they have to go looking for the money they need to build the company.
That's
So
great.
it's kind of the catch-22 of you're not actually building the thing that you need to be working on because you have to wear the other hat. So it's a fantastic idea. Congratulations that that's going well for you and moving forward. And it really takes me to my last question. Since now that you're raising capital, that means future. And so my last question then really is, what's next? What's coming for Erxes? What are you excited about for the next maybe 6 months, year and a half? What's in the pipeline for you and the company?
We basically are planning to continue raising another 2 million by the end of this year. Mainly, we wanted to, like, we are like currently really focused on bringing our platform in the next level, I mean, next level, as well as adapting some of those existing ecosystems. We are doing add-ons, new add-ons and plugging with WordPress websites, WordPress powered websites, and WooCommerce, and those kind of, like, we wanted to like adapt those ecosystems as well. So basically, those are the our like main focus and next a year and a half.
And that's fantastic because if you've already got a great large developer community that you're working with on your own, WordPress is obviously kind of the main example of a massive developer community and open source world that powers one out of every three websites, and also has managed to create, like you, then this hosted version which allows them to sell a lot of services on top of their open source free tool. That's probably a community that is very interested and aligned with what you're building at Erxes. I think that's super interesting to see what you've built, where you're going, and kind of what's going on. Well, thank you for this discussion, Noran. I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate learning more about Erxes. You guys have obviously built something really interesting, and it's starting to scale up well. You've got a great developer community. You're raising funds. Lots of cool things, I think, in front of you. And I really wish you all of the best as you scale up Erxes.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, thanks for having me today.
Very welcome. It's good to have you. And thank you as well for joining us for this episode of Startup Stories with Scaleway. If you're a startup that uses cloud computing resources, be sure to check out Scaleway's startup program at scaleway.com. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or your preferred podcast platform, and check out all of the previous episodes of the podcast. And again, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.